I've literally seen the Ku Klux Klan march up and down Main Street multiple times, and it informed how I felt like I was supposed to behave here. So, I just started hating back. My nervous system was always on edge. I'm always ready to fight, always ready for war. Hypertension is a given when you're always operating in that energy. I'm leaving work, I feel this sting, and I knew that this isn't right. I'm losing my breath. It just feels like I'm suffocating. We get to the emergency room, they get me on the gurney, and I just kind of casually take my attention up. When I do that, instantly, I'm in space. There was no tunnel, no anything. Everything was energy. Everything felt like love. The pain, the confusion, the identity stuff was gone. My name is David Williamson, and I'm from a small town in North Carolina called Yanceyville. Growing up in Yanceyville, a small town of not much more than 3,000 people, was like a Huckleberry Finn kind of story. I was always in the woods, always climbing trees, always in nature. I had really beautiful experiences as a child that made me initially view this life as magical. I was deeply interested, used to dig in the ground and try to find fossils. Everything I found, even if it was just a piece of broken glass, I thought it was some magical piece of treasure that I found. North Carolina is beautiful, but Caswell County, the county I grew up in, is one of the poorest counties in the country. It has a lot of deep-rooted racial tension. Even to this day, it has some of the highest active Ku Klux Klan activity in the country. My biological grandfather was a sharecropper, and my uncles grew up on that farm. When you couple all those things together, it creates a lot of dynamics where people get traumatized, and it goes unresolved and unaddressed. You start hearing people around you echoing the same hate that they've received from white people around us. You hear it being echoed in the houses, like, they're this way, they're that way. It gets reiterated and recycled in your day-to-day life, in your house, and at school. It's all of it, you know, and it informed how I felt like I was supposed to behave here. So, I just started hating back. I've literally seen the Ku Klux Klan march up and down Main Street, the most busy street in town, multiple times. I've seen the pain and the anger from the people while it's happening. I'm watching my aunts, my mother, and all of them just feeling so much pain, so much anger. It's in me, you know, it's affecting me. It just makes you more angry. It justifies every negative thought that you have, and you think that you can make these sweeping statements about all white people that actually make sense. But it just doesn't make sense because one of the earliest memories I have from childhood was in preschool at Graves Chapel Church. Miss Mueller, a white lady, was one of the teachers there. I remember her holding me in her lap while she did story time and feeling her love for me. Then there are other examples of white people who took an interest in me, genuinely tried to open doors for me. But when you have this narrative that you're recycling in your head over and over, you ignore the good stuff. You only center the bad, and that's where your narrative gets buttressed. Not with any good, not with any outliers. The outliers don't matter at all. It's just the narrative. Everything that supports the narrative is the only thing I can see. So, it becomes a thing where every part of your life just confirms what you want to believe. You don't feel that there's any way you could be wrong about it. The disparity is real. If the disparity is real, they are doing it. That became such a powerful boogeyman. My nervous system was always on edge. I'm always ready to fight, always ready for war. Hypertension is a given when you're always operating in an energy where you're waiting for someone to say something offensive so you can explode 400 years of rage on that person. It's so painful to be in that space all the time. I didn't get to experience anything that made me happy. I was miserable. College was even worse, you know. Still on a deep spiritual kind of journey, trying to understand stuff, but somehow this anger, this hate, is still justified. Even the gods justify it. There are gods of rage, gods of anger. I can metaphysically spiritualize my hatred and still make room for it as if it's real. There was nothing in my life, spiritual understanding, philosophical reckoning, that made hating dysfunctional or toxic. Not even when my body started telling me that hating is killing you. You feel it. You can't eat anything, and it stays. Your body stays uncomfortable. So, I was spending time just not eating because eating anything at one point just created disruption in my peace. I was like, I ain't going to eat no more then. But I had destroyed my digestive system. I'm dealing with hypertension that I'm not treating. I would check my blood pressure sometimes, and it would be 224/190. I'm just going about my day, not paying attention to the signs that my body was giving me the whole time. Everything just justified this rigid position and identity as this person who had to fix this racial disparity. It's on me. I'm the Messiah. I'm the Black Savior. I'm going to fix all of this for all of us. It was February 1st, 2021. I was just sitting in my garage with two of my friends, and I felt this pain. Initially, I didn't feel anything in my chest at all. It was like a rip that happened in my back, in the area behind my heart. Then my shoulder felt like it was about to just fall off. Nothing in that pain said heart to me. But I'd already had 7 herniated discs, 2 torn, 2 bulging, so back pain was kind of a normal thing. So, I said to my friend, I looked at him, my eyes were big, and I said, man, this back pain just shifted gears. I'm leaving work, I feel this tingle, like a sting, and I knew that this isn't right. So, I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, is this something that's just going to pass? I just sit there for a moment, and I find a level of stability where I can tolerate this until I get home. So, I drove home. I get there, the fluttering, the stinging, all of that stuff is still happening. Now I'm feeling it in my heart. My son's mother, Trish, she's working from home. So, I call up to her and say, I think I need to go to the emergency room. This is not getting better, it's getting worse. As we're in the car, I'm losing my breath. It just feels like I'm suffocating. I'm breathing really deep to try to stay conscious. We get to the emergency room, I'm kind of elated, I'm walking up, they get me on the gurney, and almost immediately, I'm asleep. I always try to make note of this fact because people say you're hallucinating, right? But I passed out before I went into the area where they were working on me. I'm not dead, I don't think, because my perspective is on the bed, like I'm looking that way, but I'm not seeing anything but where the people were, dots that almost look like a nighttime sky. That stuff was clear to me in that state. But as far as explaining it to my conscious mind, there's no way I could know why I understood what was happening in that moment. After I saw the blackness and the dots where the people were, my perspective shifted, and I was above myself, looking down. I saw the whole setup of the room. I saw where the people were. They were still kind of positioned the way they were when they were pushing me in, but I was able to see where everybody was, including a woman who was in the corner of the room. She was holding her face like this, and she was really sad that I was dying. That was one of the things that initially disturbed me the most when I left my body. I was like, what in the world is she sad for? This is so beautiful, this is so perfect. I'm not hurting, I'm not confused. That guy is dead, but I'm alive. This is beautiful. So, to me, that just clarifies that it's not a hallucination. I learned while I was out of my body. I saw in real time what was happening to me, and everything, when I opened my eyes, continued in real time. There was no separation in my awareness, no gap between what I was experiencing, whether I was in the body or out of the body. It was a continual flow of experience. Once I did leave my body and looked down, there were a lot of things that I came to understand, like, he's dead, his body's dead, the mind is dead, the ego's dead. After that series of realizations, it was like, well then, what's left? What am I? The words flooded in very clearly. It was audible. These words, light, energy, soul, spirit, awareness, were just a flood of words. They weren't in a line, like mechanical. It was like a bunch of voices saying these words, but it felt like it was me explaining this to myself. Everything was energy, everything felt like love, and I felt like a part of that whole thing. I didn't feel separate from it at all. Everything I looked at, every question I had, the clarity was instantaneous. In that process, I was like, what's that? What's that? What's that? It was like a baby having an aha moment. Everything was an aha moment, and I moved from one thing to the next with that childlike wonder and amazement at what I was seeing. There was no memory of this human experience that I was referring any of it back to. There was no mind like that. It was just an awareness that was beholding these things and integrating them instantly. So, I'm watching everything. I'm watching the woman who's holding her face, just sad about me dying. After a while, I'm paying attention to stuff, and I just kind of casually take my attention up. When I do that, instantly, I'm in space. There was no tunnel, no anything. I quickly became aware of what people call the light. It was up and to the right of me. The emergency room was down and to the left of me, and I was in that angle, looking forward out into space. What was in front of me was the star-forming region. What was beneath me was what people call the void. I felt like I was in the blackness, and it enveloped me like velvet. It felt like love. It felt like every other aspect of being disembodied in that moment for me. Everything felt like love. I felt like love. I felt like the system I found myself in was just love, and I was just a part of it. But it also felt like it was everything, every possibility, every past experience. Everything was in the void, in that black space. When I looked into it, it reacted, it responded. If there was any kind of thought that wasn't complete, it was completed instantly. If there was a notion of missing something, the satisfaction of having that was there before the missing was even fully felt. There's a woman I was exchanging with who said, well, I don't want to just magically forget people I love in this life. I was trying to explain that that's a human thought. It comes from a brain, from memory, from life. But when you leave this body, you're not going to be a human body with a brain that has memory. You're going to be an energy that's so connected to this experience, to this whole thing, that the experience is integrated in you. There is no missing. Something missing from that experience isn't gone, it's always accessible. Every part of this experience you have is etched in infinity. There's no something disappearing and never being experienceable again. It's always there, so you don't miss anything. There's no missing anything. You're more integrated with the system outside of the body than you are in the body. That's kind of what we are, an individual node accumulating a perspective that ultimately gets fed back into the system and becomes a possibility, an option for everybody else in the system forever. So, your experiences are never lost. When I was in space, I was interested in everything. My attention kind of just moved all around. There was a point where I was looking up at the light, almost like I was trying to decide if I was going to even entertain it or not. I looked back up at it, then looked back down into the emergency room. When my attention went from the upper angle down back to the left, it went through me, and I was just a glowing orb of light. That's what I appeared to be. I had never felt more alive than when I was that glowing orb of light. I had never felt more aware of what was happening on this planet. In that state, I understood everything. The pain, the confusion, the identity stuff was gone. We are all orbs of light, we're not these bodies. I experienced the orb of light as being perfect, not confused, not contextualized in a human sense where it's going to cheerlead for one side or the other. It was disconnected somewhat from the specifics of the human experience. It was just aware, like, oh, you were in that body. Oh, that body's dead. It wasn't like, oh, you were a black activist, and you need to go back and hop in that body and get to fighting. That fight stuff was done. I kind of just watched everything. I watched them continuing to defibrillate me, but the biggest image that sticks with me is the woman who was bothered by me dying, holding her face. If there's any small part of this experience that I was disappointed about, it was that in that moment, I was trying to figure out how to communicate with her. I couldn't tell her, no, don't be sad. This is beautiful. My back's not hurting, I'm not confused about what's happening. This is beautiful. This is the most alive I've ever felt. The people around me involved with the resuscitation effort, some of them were mechanical, just doing their job. They didn't have any emotional investment, and I could feel all of that. But there was one person in front, kind of to the angle, and he was really going through it. In his mind, it was almost like he felt responsible for making sure I didn't die, and he didn't want to feel responsible for that. So, when I opened my eyes, the first thing I blurted out was, "Are you okay?" I was looking for the woman. Then I looked up at the person in front of me to the right and said, "Are you okay?" He cut me off and said, "No, are you okay?" Someone from the right said, "You didn't feel that?" I almost said, "Feel what?" but I looked down and saw this rubber pad where the defibrillator pads had been. They were in the person's hand, like they were about to defibrillate me again. I saw the indentation from the defibrillator pads on my chest, and I was like, oh, you really were dead. That's when it all flooded into my mind and my human awareness. I saw the pad where they were defibrillating me, and I saw them defibrillating me from above. It all connected in that moment when I looked down, and he asked, "You didn't feel that?" I said, "I didn't feel anything. There was no pain, no trauma at all in the process of me dying. Catching my breath on the way to the hospital was as deep as the pain of my death got. So, it just made me have no fear of dying, no fear of what's next. When I came back from my near-death experience, I was so painfully aware of everything around me, people's pain and confusion. I already felt like I had these empathic tendencies before, but it was times 5,000 when I came back. I think that contributed to how long it took for me to integrate because I didn't have the opportunity to just sit and heal. As soon as I was able to stand up, I had to go back to work. I'm at work, and I'm like, I feel a little different. I'm interacting differently. I'm seeing better results because I'm not playing the politics game. I don't have any identity stuff influencing my decisions and performance. I'm actually looking at work in a lighter way. There's no need to go to work and fight over politics or deal with white-black stuff. I just have to go to work and perform. The heaviness, the anger, the hate, I'm not carrying that around anymore. So, I'm received differently. I have more graceful interactions with people. I don't feel like there's somebody trying to block my progress. None of that stuff is real. None of those stories are in me, influencing the outcome. What having that experience does to you is it gives you this extremely radical sense of accountability, all the way down to the thoughts you've had. Sometimes we think that because we didn't actually say something, we still have a position of righteousness. I didn't call you that, but you thought it. If you thought it, own that thought. You have to own that thought because that thought contributed to the tension created in that moment. So, we have to learn how to understand what we're doing and what we're choosing. Don't allow tension, pain, and confusion to persist for too long because it'll hurt you and influence your perspective of reality in a way that gives you a bias. When you feel it, fix it, so the bias doesn't sit in you so long that it becomes part of you and is hard to get out. What my experience showed me is that we tend to become the emotions instead of just feeling them and letting them pass. I became hate instead of saying, "Oh, damn, that was hateful. Do I want to respond?" We don't pause and think about the impact of feeling hate on your physical being. Was it personal? Is this person just miserable? Do I have to internalize what they're saying? No. But when you're already on edge and you already have these biases, you're ready to jump as soon as the invitation is presented. You may very well be justified in your anger, and you're definitely going to feel justified in your anger. But my anger killed me. If I was able to see what I was in a different way, instead of responding with anger, responding with responsibility, responding with hope, I could help change that, versus using all that energy on just hating the people I feel are creating the dynamic. The further removed I am from feeling all that pain for so long, it damaged my body, made me so sick because of how I'm thinking. The only way I was able to shake the connection to those stories and narratives was through having that reset, having those narratives shaken off me. My experience occurred in such a way that abroad, it gave me some different kind of clarity, and there is an opportunity for me to move forward differently, period. If I don't take that opportunity, that's the choice I make, but the opportunity exists. You will revisit the same things that led to your death, and I do. I revisit the same frustrations, sometimes moments of hopelessness. But now I just ask, am I going to choose to stay in that emotion? Am I going to become hopelessness? Am I going to become frustration? Am I going to become hate? No, I'm going to process it, let it do what it's going to do in that moment, then leave it alone, let it go, and move on to the next thought, the next choice. We're just having an experience here, and because of the narratives and stories we choose, it becomes a negative experience or a positive experience. But it's all just stories, and you don't have to choose those stories. You come here already equipped without a function here, and we're not taught to honor that in any way whatsoever. We're taught who to be, what we are, what our name is, what's important, who we're supposed to like, who we're supposed to hate, how we're supposed to be. We're told all this stuff, and then we expect people to develop into authentic human beings when they've never made a decision for themselves at all. They just accepted prepackaged identities. There's no choice in that. You're just selecting from what's not even available to you but is actually pushed on you by people who love you. They're giving you this advice because they love you. They're telling you to think this way because they think it worked for them, and they just want you to be okay. But it doesn't work. Look at the world around us. This thinking and these orientations we have toward each other, this planet, and this life don't work. The more clear I have become about what being a human being is, the mind, the body, the ego, and this soul thing that is infinite and leaves this place, it's perfect. It doesn't hold on to human trauma or this stuff. It's permanent, and it's what you leave here as. That's what you are. We are creating our next life right now in this moment with our attention. As long as we can own our attention and not allow it to be manipulated and injected with a bunch of software that doesn't originate inside of us, if you focus on misery, you're compounding misery. If you focus on hope, you're increasing the probability that other things can happen outside of the negative possibilities. If we collectively start understanding how to galvanize our attention in different ways, we can magnify our creative capacity. If an individual can focus their attention on what they want and get it, imagine if 20,000, 30,000, a million individuals can focus their attention in a unified way and what they can create.